Bonjour, Rog fans, and today's Rog Rant is, do we have democracy in the UK? Ever since this legislation came out, which a lot of people have said is illegal, unjust and inhumane, and seems to be the same around the world. I think there's a court case in Austria, actually. The people have got against the government for inhumane. I think war crimes was even a term used regarding this. But that's for a different thing. And we couldn't speak about it anyway because YouTube would ban us. And that's obviously not a conspiracy, is it? So moving forward, UK doesn't have a democracy. For example, why? Because, why? You're an MP, you get elected to be a minister. Say you become the Minister of Health. You go into the Minister of Health department. You know nothing about health. That's the first clue that there's not a democracy. Because why would you have people who have no health experience, no healthcare experience, no medical qualifications, working in the Department of Health, at heading it? Unless it's a puppet position. That's not democracy, is it? It's puppetry. And the permanent secretary of that department, they're the person who run it. And they've usually been running it because they're permanent for 20, 30 years. So they know what the department is supposed to do and what it's supposed to achieve. But they're working on behalf of their masters, who are not the elected people that they're supposed to answer to. And they're not the people who elect government, or pretend to elect government. There it's banks, businesses, corporations, oligarchs and the military industrial complex. That's what they answer to. Another example of why we don't have democracy. So they go and tell the minister what legislation should be and when the legislation should be produced. And they control, the civil servants control when legislation is presented to the Houses of Parliament. And they control the vote. Again, where is the democracy in that? And don't forget that the word democracy comes from two Greek words, demos, meaning group or many, and krasi, or kratika, which means rule. Now, when the Greeks invented democracy, they had it for 1,000 years, they were brilliant. When it started to turn to fascism, when you had one person in charge, a dictatorship, that's when it imploded. The Romans brilliantly proved that. It was around the time of Marcus Aurelius that they decided that the Senate had become corrupt and it was all full of backstabbers and stuff and was non-democratic, and so they needed to have a ruler, exactly the same as Senator Palpatine did in Revenge of the Sith. They needed to have a ruler, to have an empire, a fascist dictatorship, and so the first Caesar was born, and that was the end of democracy. And now what do we have? We have prime ministers, and we have presidents. We have singular people in charge who have more power than the group they represent. That is not democracy. Is that democracy? I think we need comments down below on that, because I don't think that's democracy. If it's democracy, if we live in a democracy here in the UK, then why is it that 60 to 70% of everyone's income outside of government is taken away in taxes and fines before they even get it in their hand? Why is that? How is that democracy? And yet the people in government don't have that problem. The people in government don't have to pay for council tax, they don't have to pay for rent or mortgages, they don't have to pay for their second home. We pay for their second homes, we pay for their cars, we pay for their drivers, we pay for all of that stuff. They don't pay for it. When did we the people democratically say that's the way it should be? And last year, thanks to this legislation created by the government, they said, oh, there's a huge debt. I was saying this a couple of weeks ago, rather. Huge debt. Billions of pounds we owe because of furlough, which is an American term, which is basically suspension in disgrace. If you go AWOL as a military person, or you embezzle money as a police officer, or you do something inappropriate as a teacher, you get put on furlough. It's suspension in disgrace, either with full pay, partial pay, or no pay. So because our fascist dictatorship put the vast majority of people, as many as they could, on suspension in disgrace and partial pay, when they could have put them on full pay, but they put them on partial pay on purpose. We don't know why that is, but it's all part of this legislation stuff. Loads of businesses gone down in pan, loads of people made homeless. Now, that term doesn't apply to us, because why are we being suspended in disgrace? And if it's a democracy, when will we, the 72 million, ask for our opinion on whether A, this needed to even exist as a legislation, which the only other legislation for a disease in this country is the 1936 Cancer Act, which is the very reason there's no cure. But that's a different thing. Why weren't we asked whether we needed a legislation? Why weren't we asked what we wanted in it? Because we are the many. We are the many. Why were we not asked what we considered to be essential businesses? They don't even go shopping. They don't even buy their own petrol. They don't know anything about the real world. So why is it, if we're in a democracy, that happened? Why is it, if we're in a democracy, when they tell us we owe them billions of pounds in tax because of their unnecessary furlough crap, why is it that last year they gave themselves and the civil service a huge increase in pensions and a huge pay rise? And why is it this year then, if it's a democracy, that last year when the councils were largely keeping their entire staff at home on full pay, not furlough, yeah, and they provide almost no services, that this year council tax has increased? If it's a democracy, why has that happened? Why were we not asked? Why have we not had a reimbursement from the council? Because they haven't been doing their job. It doesn't matter what the circumstances. Don't imagine what that would do to. And why was it that when the government put in this highly suspicious and possibly illegal and definitely inhumane legislation, that they didn't give complete and utter tax breaks? They didn't just give tax breaks as well to businesses. They took away. Why didn't they take away all tax? Why didn't they freeze all mortgages, all rent, and all tax on businesses that were affected? That would have been democratic. Why did they not ask the businesses? Why is it that when our puppet fascist dictator came on the telly and said that all businesses needed to close of a certain type, that none of those businesses had it in writing? Now, from the Ruddy's rather limited grasp of the law, if it's not in writing, it's not legal. So if they didn't have it in writing, why did they close the businesses? And then how could councils go and fine businesses for staying open when they didn't give the businesses in writing a notice of closure, of forced closure due to fascist dictatorship legislation? How is that democratic? If you've got any more examples of lack of democracy, or if you think that I'm wrong and we live in a democracy and that it's okay that we lose 70% of our wages in fines and that old people should have pensions that are well below the cost of living, well below that of the lowest grade in the NHS, which is also civil service pension, comment down below. And don't forget, it's not reality, it's YouTube.